Shadow Soldiers 3, Shadow Soldiers Series, written by Rath W. Asing, narrated by Stephen Floyd. Domestic Guard, Chapter 1, A Child's Grave. Angel stood at parade rest at the foot of the new grave with a tin marker for its headstone. It would be replaced with a small flat stone that would have a gravesite number and the words Jane Doe. No one but the cemetery staff attended the funeral. She would not have been there, except her plane heading back to Texas was delayed out of Tampa, and she picked up a local newspaper to pass the 2-hour wait. The article on a mutilated and abused child's body found in a dumpster stopped her plans for a quick escape from the Florida humidity. She came down to visit a distant relative, honoring her mother's wishes. The party for her uncle Alphonse was terrific, but Clearwater was not the vast Texas open range, and she felt hemmed in by the encroaching plants and huge insects. Now her plans changed. Somehow this child of 6 years grabbed her heart and would not let go. Beaten, sexually molested, and then brutally killed, Jane Doe had a story, and it was not being told in a potter's field. The impulse to leave the airport, rent a vehicle, and drive from Tampa to Clearwater for the gravesite funeral was not an unusual reaction for this soldier-turned-mercenary. Angel loved her work best if it was for a cause her heart could feel. The abuse of children was one of those causes that would make her move mountains. The other was a soldier lost and in need of help. Sarge continues using her skills and finds work she is comfortable performing as one of his consultants at WCM, handling special projects. She enjoys the work, like her trip to San Jose, Costa Rica, bringing a soldier in from the cold. Colcasita is her home, and when visiting mercenaries come to town, she is introduced as a local. She fits in easily with her jeans, worn boots, and a well-creased Stetson. Her little cottage now has a barn with 3 Mustangs, always ready for a desert run. Today, the quiet cemetery and the newly turned dirt over the child's coffin held her suspended in time. Her life was one of action based upon the plans of war. Take a hill or capture an enemy combatant for interrogation were efficiently executed tasks she performed well. Now she needed to investigate, and she was ill-prepared for the task. While she knew she could rely on Sarge to come to her rescue, she decided to take charge herself. The first call she made was to H, international banker and spy who had connections around the globe and a kindly ear when one asked. He agreed immediately to help and asked her to call Meggs next. Meggs is a JSOC agent and was also willing to help in any way she can. Working now out of Galveston, Texas, Meggs had some interesting Gulf of Mexico resources that could be brought to bear if needed, including her new partner just arriving from a New Jersey police detective's career. Around her, life continued to move. At her feet, one special life found its resting place. Her silent vow welled up within her chest until there was no way to hold back the tears. This child's murderer would not go free. Wayward Merc, Chapter 1, Takedown. The situation came to a horrible climax, and Peter was too far from the women to await their help. He called for Emily and Meggs via earbuds, but they were still 5 minutes from the warehouse. Shots rang out, and 2 of the men, standing in front of the kneeling girls, slumped to the ground. The third one, still holding the gun pointed at the head of one of the girls, turned towards the commotion when his neck exploded, and he too fell lifeless in a heap. It was only seconds when Alvarez stood, holding the weapon from the third man. He began to turn towards the women, but a bright red dot appeared on his forehead, and a spray of pink mist exploded behind his head. Peter took off in a dead run for the warehouse. The 2 women, held captive by Mexican bandits, were beyond screaming, and knelt in the blood and dust of the warehouse. Their 6-week ordeal was over, but it would be many months before normal life returned. Emily, Meggs, scout the perimeter. We have a sniper. Maybe another merc hired for the same job. He took out all 4, and I have the women. See if we can at least buy him a cerveza. Peter had been a mercenary for only 10 months. After receiving an introduction to the world by H in New York and playing runner on a few missions, he was asked to join Emily Burke Hansen on an abduction case in Texas and Mexico. "Peter, we are here and have scanned the likely spots. This sniper of yours is in the wind." Meg's voice in his ear meant Peter was no longer on the battlefield alone. "Send in Emily to help with the women. Keep an eye on the road, and let's get to safer ground." There were no leader-follower roles. There were no egos. Just 3 soldiers doing what needed doing. Emily came in with 2 blankets and worked to get the women untied and ready for travel. Peter inspected the bodies, removing any information that could be helpful, and checked the warehouse for evidence. The case was not over. Yes, they rescued the 2 hostages, and one non bandito lay in a pool of his blood, but any lead they had on the rest of the gang died in that warehouse. Hearing 3 short bleats of the horn, Peter took one of the bundled women, guiding her out of the warehouse and into the waiting van. Within 5 minutes, they were out of the warehouse district and hidden in the morning traffic of Mexico City. The only choice was to get back to headquarters and regroup. Alvarez Cortez was a bad guy and a known bandito throughout Mexico. Now he was a distorted lump of clay in a dusty, abandoned warehouse. WCM was on the case for 4 days, attempting to do the impossible, and Cortez was our only lead into the gang that abducted the 2 women. WCM answered the call made by a U.S. senator from New Mexico. He was the father of the 2 women and had paid the ransom, only to be told it was not enough. $6 million left in an abandoned gas station just over the border in Mexico did not get them back. Now they wanted an additional $6 million. $6 million the father did not have to give. That was when the father went to a U.S. senator from Texas. The senator called a friend in the armed services, and Meggs received a call from JSOC to look into the situation. That was 4 days ago. Sarge had been called and already had staff at WCM headquarters in Texas to handle the women and get them safely back to their father. The team in Mexico occupied the north wing of the 15-room motel with picnic tables in the front courtyard. Those tables had a unique set of diners, 6 guys and gals sipping coffee and eating donuts. Each had a long leather bag on the table within easy reach. Each bag held their weapon of choice. They were our front line of defense, but there were 3 others hidden from view that also maintained vigilance over WCM headquarters, Mexico. Peter guided the 2 women into a room where 3 nurses and a doctor took over. Within 3 hours, they would be tended to and prepared for travel. It was a 1,200-mile trip, but they would not be traveling the highways of Mexico. Sarge had a team of rangers from Fort Hood to escort the women back to the U.S. 6 fully armed rangers, accompanied by a teniente colonel, our Mexican advisor, the equivalent to a lieutenant colonel in our army, was assigned by the General Secretario de la Defensa Nacional for this operation. They would land a Mexican helicopter on the road outside the motel, blocking traffic. The helicopter would take the women to a Mexican military base, where they'd be transferred to a U.S. Bell Boeing V-22 Osprey for their final trip home. Emily pushed Peter into the last room she and Meggs used. The novice Merc was in for a good talking to. As he awaited their arrival, he went over the morning. Had he done his job? Did he miss something? Peter wasn't sure, being so new to the business. His soldier's training took over, and he evaluated the day's events without emotion. Infiltrated the enemy's encampment, established visual contact with the captive women, called in the team, and properly advanced when the proverbial hit the fan. Sitting on the bed, he awaited his fate. How bad could it be? 2 of the prettiest women Peter had ever met in service would be his interrogators. How bad could it be? Lost Soul, Chapter 1, Note Left Behind. To whoever finds this, this is my final testament to a life lived as I chose. I leave it to others to judge the value of my purpose and actions. I make no excuse nor have any misgivings for the path I took in this lifetime. I believe that I was born to be a soldier, and I will die like a soldier on the battlefield. The last warrior team to know me calls me Jason Alexander Bennis, It is a name that has served me with distinction and includes an honorable discharge from the U.S. Army Rangers. Do not spend time researching, as it too is an alias. The life before the Army was not filled with the ordinary enjoyments of childhood in America, and my past is covered and to be left a mystery. This locker holds the contents of my life. Pass them on to others who can make use of them. I have no family to consider except my brothers and sisters in battle. The 3 bank accounts are to be turned over to Sarge at WCM for distribution through his charities. I know that the last battlefield is close, and I ask my fellow warriors to grant me this one boon. Please let me lie on the field of battle. It is where I am most alive. It is where my soul will find its eternal rest. Do not drag my corpse home for stone markers and solemn mornings. To end in battle is the celebration I seek to fulfill my earthly adventure. Signed, Jason A. Bennis, Soldier. Mission Wrap-Up. The headquarters of WCM in Fort Davis, Texas, had grown to include a separate ready room called the bunkhouse, where mercs could come and store personal belongings while out on a mission. Jones' silver and black 1963 Corvette Stingray maintained a prized position in the center of the room. Anyone entering the room knew Joan. There was no reason to provide additional protection. Her reputation alone made sure even the hardest merc wouldn't touch her stuff. Jason had a small locker along the back wall. He was also a frequenter of the loft bunks when he was not out on a mission. His life was all about the battlefield, and try as he might, Sarge rarely got the man to seek other interests. Sarge took it upon himself to make the final arrangements and was the first to read the note attached to the sealed folder containing the bank records. He sat on the stool in front of the bank of lockers, rereading the note and thinking back over the years since he met the ground pounder with an attitude and a smile. He would wander in from the desert and stand at parade rest near his office when he needed an assignment. Sarge had come to rely on his abilities and his desire for long-term missions, usually as a solitary hunter. Jason wasn't a trained sniper like John, but he was good at quiet infiltration and information gathering. He was also very good at armed engagement leading from the front on the battlefield. It was on the battlefield in a devastated African nation that he had sent Jason to his death. The mission was to rescue some missionaries, and all knew it was going to be a hot insertion. All agreed to risk their lives. 8 soldiers sent, and 7 returned, bringing out the 3 nuns and the priest captured by the warring faction. It hurt deep within his soul, knowing he gave the order. Success had a price to pay, and it was another regretful burden the old soldier would have to bear. Sarge called Angel to put the bar in Colchicita on notice. In 4 days, on Thursday night, they would hold a soldier's toast. The town had become accustomed to the comings and goings of mercenaries and other members of WCM. The bar owner understood the need for the evening, being a retired Marine no longer on the battle lines. He cleared out any delicate furniture and put away the expensive decanters and glass shelves behind the bar. In their place, he produced service pictures and flags from the regiments of those who would attend. They weren't rowdy, just larger than life compared to his regular patrons. They moved with a swagger that beautiful furniture usually succumbed to, especially after the first 10 toasts. There, under the box in the locker, was a memoir written by the soldier they called Jason. Brother, Oh Brother, Chapter 1, Playgrounds. I looked down the hill at the playground, stretched out in silence, awaiting the night to cover it. The swings and seesaws, plastic, now brought back memories, quickly filling my mind with roads I could have traveled. It seemed so expansive back when boys in white shirts and green corduroy pants raced across the ball field, and the 8th grade girls with those fancy, almost outrageous new dress skirts tempted our Catholic celibacy. Now it was small and shabby, littered with the realities of life gone by. The darkness took the past meanderings, covering them in shadows, but not as dark as my reason to be here. I have come back to my home to kidnap Jeannie Constantine. The same Jeannie Constantine who tormented my 8th grade dreams. especially after Sister Killer Carl announced to the class I was going into the seminary. I believe the nun's words were she would rot in hell before I would be a priest. I know she got that one part right, but I no longer wish to see her rotting in hell. I do still feel the deep pain of regret. After the announcement, I was too chicken to ask my boyhood crush to dance, and Jeannie Constantine became a love lost to time. She is Mrs. Albemarle now, and she will leave the convent in about an hour and walk to her home 2 blocks away. Her life went through the natural stages, and now she is the lay principal of St. Patrick and George Catholic School with grown children of her own. Her husband Henry Albemarle holds dinner on Fridays, since she spends time with the 3 elderly nuns who are fixtures in the parish. He would wait a bit longer this evening. My name, back when I wore corduroy and shied away from schoolgirls, was James Patrick O'Sullivan. The reason that is so important is that the man just elected as President of the United States and being inaugurated in 3 weeks is William Charles O'Sullivan, my older brother. You see, a week ago I was given a contract by a man to kill the President-elect. What that man did not know was that my alias, Brady Ruth O'Malley, hid my connection to the President-elect. I only used it in and around the D.C. area. Most knew me by my first alias, Connor Benson. I understand that I have a lot to explain, but as the night hid the playground, I needed to hide my actions for the next 3 to 4 weeks. I accepted the contract. It was the only way I knew to save my brother and give me the time to find who really ordered his death. The convent kitchen door opened and Jeannie walked out into the brisk December night. I moved off the hill and set my pace to intercept her just as she reached the cone of light from the corner street lamp. Recruiting. Chapter 1. Finding Talent. Sarge packed the last of his shirts and swung the duffel bag over his shoulder. Sewn so many times, the stitching looked like camouflage. The lettering showing his name was now a faded shadow of his first days in service. The strap sinking the top was the 3rd replacement, and the base of the duffel bag reinforced 4 times. He whistled as he yanked the bag up across his shoulder and glared at the smirk from Angel. Making his way to the door, Angel falling in line, he headed for the transport that would begin their journey to the Middle East and another WCM consulting assignment for the U.S. Army. Asked to work with some in-country soldiers, providing close combat training was always a pleasure for the retired sergeant who would not put down his weapon. Many years ago, Sarge first met Angel on a similar assignment. Now her presence was more than an assistant. She had become family, replacing those taken from him. Recruitment policy. WCM built an intricate method for recruitment. The mercenary business overflows with gun-hungry players that would never fit within the ethos of Sarge's core objective. Over the years, it became a policy that recruits were asked to join rather than allowing the individual to request admittance. Only a few WCM members were part of the admissions process. H, Megs, and Blue were considered the top 3 in finding and inviting recruits. If you wanted to recommend someone, it was best to work through one of them before getting Sarge involved. Angel remained more support for Sarge and rarely engaged in recruitment. She did, however, enjoy the chances to get back in the ranks of the armed forces. She longed for the days surrounded by squad mates and mission briefs, days that made sense to a girl from the streets of L.A. This trip was unlike many others. 8 months ago, a recruit was identified and run up through the hierarchy of WCM. None other than WCM's Playboy soldier, Alec, put her name in for recruitment. Alec was pulled in from his tropical paradise, a rundown shanty passing as the local bar on the coast of a non-tourist destination in the Caribbean islands. His mission was to help ferret out a sniper in the desert, and they assigned Greta to him as a spotter. 2 months later, the sniper was no longer a threat to American troops, and Blue was called in to meet a spotter with some real moxie. Greta Crystal Beringsway was the son to her Army father, comrade to her Army Ranger squad mates, and beholding to no one. She excelled at everything she attempted, and while her 12th year of service was coming to an end, she still had soldiering to do. She had put in her papers for her mother's sake. Dad had her for 30-plus years. Now it was time to be the daughter her mother patiently yearned. Alec picked up on the buried warrior's heart as Greta spoke about her new assignment in the real world. In 9 months, she was heading back to Parkston, Pennsylvania to apprentice at her mother's dress shop. There was a real joy in her voice as she spoke about her mother and the moments of her childhood when the two were the closest of friends. There was a real sense of duty to give her mother a part of her life, compensating for years away following her father's dream. But it was in the field where Alec saw the thing that made him call Blue and ask him to review this warrior for WCM. Many soldiers are good at their job, performing well and proving their worth. A few have the inherent strength that goes beyond performance. The eternal soldier is at home when on a mission. This Alec understood. He had found some solace in his tropical paradise, but he was only truly alive when he was on the battlefield. Greta's movements, as they sought out and ended the terror of an enemy sniper, were instinctual, never wasted, and always in sync with his. On the last day of the hunt, Alec stopped, feeling her tap on his boot. He had come to trust her completely as his spotter. She moved up close to his ear and whispered instructions, fully expecting Alec to comply. He reset his scope and quickly turned on his side, spotting the figure in the bushes they had passed by 10 minutes ago. Firing, he reloaded and pushed Greta down behind a rock, placing his scope back on the target in the bushes. It did not matter. The first shot finished their search. They found the rebel sniper, his dead hands still attempting to load the round into his Russian-made rifle. The process of recruitment is never a straight line. It is a series of encounters where the recruit and the WCM mercenary explore the options of service in a unique way. The day Alec returned with the sniper's rifle, he placed the call to Blue and started the process. He knew it would take all of the 9 months left on Greta's enlistment to get through the process. Alec shared a bit about his life as a merc for WCM and saw the glimmer as she listened. Until the initial process was complete, he could not engage her interest. Blue would need to approve her background, and Sarge would need to approve her character before they entertained an offer.